Nope. Well,
We are off to a running start.
I know. Awesome. I have everything under control. Whoops. Self-destruct button has been pushed.
It's okay. We're professionals. We can recover. Everyone,
Exactly.
I am Tyler Heil, and welcome to the Dynasty 365 podcast, the Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. I am joined by my co-host, Jorge Edwards. Jorge, how you doing?
Man, I am doing fantastic. I love the theme of our next two shows, doing like mid-season reviews here and there. And this is great for Dynasty. You know, I love the fact that we keep going back and looking at the different positions and their values and whatnot. But to look at everything as a whole so far this season and seeing where players stack up from where we were calling them risers or fallers before the season started, and now we're going to look at how that's changed, or maybe it hasn't, for certain players now that we're halfway through the season. Man, I am excited for this show tonight.
Yes, this is going to be a lot of fun, and it's a good reminder. Don't maybe don't make calls too early on people. You got to give things a chance to play out. So, as Jorge mentioned, we're going to be doing a first half review, and I think we're both really excited for this mock draft we're going to do on Fourth and Frames immediately following this. Myself, Jorge, Nate Markham, and Keith Fleming from the Daily Fix podcast. And I did not mention Nate Markham from the Shoot the Gap podcast. We're going to be doing a redraft mid-season draft, essentially, and just redraft brand new teams and go with all of the information we have. But mid-season information is what we're going to cover tonight. So we did a first quarter stock review. And Jorge, would you mind running us through the guys that we called out in our first quarter stock review podcast as risers and fallers?
Absolutely. So let's start off with the risers, all right? Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, I think we all, in the beginning of the season, we realized maybe we shouldn't have been so, hey, he's only fantasy relevant because he's the only one catching targets. Like, no, he's actually really good. So, and then we have next Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, Damian Pierce has been coming on strong, Romeo Doubs, Christian Kirk, Geno Smith rising in dynasty value,
still rising somehow.
Yes, it's crazy. I mean, good for him, man. Good for him.
Yeah,
good for the fantasy managers that took a gamble on him.
Yes.
As I'm tooting my own horn. Tyler Higbee, James Robinson, Saquon Barkley. And I think I want to say he's like the darling. It does not sound great, but he's kind of like the darling of all the dynasty pods out there, especially here at Fantasy and Frames, because we wrote up how many articles on this guy, Khalil Herbert. And again, stock only continuing to rise, or maybe that's a spoiler. We'll get to that a little bit later. And Christian Kirk, another wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Talking about fallers, though, this is where things get kind of interesting here. You know, we have Justin Fields, so it makes you wonder: is he still a faller now?
I don't know.
Maybe we'll talk about it later. Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Travis Etienne, Ronald Jones, Dawson Knox. I mean, there's been some changes, for these risers and fallers, and it'll be interesting to see what we get into in talking about where these guys stand now currently.
Yes, absolutely. So, let's go ahead and jump right into some of our new risers. And the first one I want to call out, because pulled the old switcheroo on us, was Travis Etienne. Don't read too much into the tea leaves just in the first month of the season. We got to remember it's a shortened preseason for some of these teams. They're not playing their guys as much. They're just figuring out what it is, especially when you have a new head coach and a brand new offense like they do in Jacksonville, and they're figuring out where they're coming from. James Robinson's a good player. He is, but Travis Etienne's explosive, and he went from looking like a 1B in a committee to he's the workhorse right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to remain true, but I mean, do you think he can maintain that workload over multiple seasons?
What are we talking, like three seasons?
Sure, that's all you need in Dynasty, right?
Then that's fine with me. I don't see him as being somebody who's going to be Derrick Henry 5-season, 6-season plotter who's just gonna absorb contact. It's unfortunately that's just the way it is. But for 3 seasons, that you are in a fantasy title window with Travis Etienne on your roster as a starting running back. It's been really impressive, and to see him come off of what was it, Achilles last year, where a lot of running backs you hear about who are coming off of it's Achilles, right? I'm not making that up.
I thought it was a foot injury. Let me check. Let me fact check. Keep going.
I think it was. You're right. I think it was a Liz Frank injury or something close to that. Either way, to come off of an injury that involves like what you're using primarily to make a living playing football, definitely impressive. You've seen the trade with James Robinson going to the Jets, and the sky's been the limit for Etienne ever since. Even before then, which is why they got rid of James Robinson.
Yes. So you're in a championship run. What are you trying to pay for Travis Etienne?
Oh, I can't get him, and the fantasy manager. I'm assuming the fantasy manager that has him is also in said championship run, and there's no way I can now. If I was like gonna say, hey, I don't care which roster he's on, I want this guy. What would I give up to acquire him? It would have to be a first, maybe a first and a second, and I don't even know, depending on who has him, if that would be enough. And I don't know whether it's because of value per se or hype and value at this time. Doing trades like this during the season, I mean, especially for a player that's producing, is so difficult versus the off season when we all get into our dynasty leagues and really dive deep into stuff, because we are consumed by the ebbs and flows of fantasy performance. That one good performance can make somebody go like, no, I want a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth. I'm like, Jesus, calm down. Like, the guy had 2 good weeks. Let's put it in perspective. But yeah, what about you? What would you give up for Etienne?
I think you're right on with that price, a 1, maybe a 2. I actually just sold Etienne for what is likely going to be a top 4 pick in 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, I sold him to a guy, and then I promptly beat him the next week to worsen his record. So nice. I was pretty happy with that.
Very nice.
But speaking of what you mentioned about being good for a few games, Josh Jacobs is a riser. Had an absolutely astronomical 3 games, and really got people believing in him again. Obviously the Raiders have their issues. We'll just say.
Sure.
I don't know if we're smart enough or have enough time to delve into the many issues that the Las Vegas Raiders have, but Josh Jacobs does not seem to be one of them. He's a young running back. He's a 24-year-old running back that's about to be a free agent, that is just having one of the most productive and most efficient seasons of his career. And this is just all working out really well for Josh Jacobs. So I think regardless of how the rest of his season turns out, barring injury, Jacobs is going to be the starter somewhere next year. And even if it's in Las Vegas, that's okay. But he is a far cry from what he was 2 months ago. People were writing him off. Were you in that camp?
I mean, it was kind of hard not to be with, was it Zamir White being drafted there, and then him being talked about as being the eventual heir apparent, the talk in the offseason about how they didn't, re-sign Jacobs or give him an extension. He's coming off of his rookie deal this season. And you know what? There's something to be said for when your back's against the wall. And if you remember, Tyler, the Hall of Fame game, where the Raiders just ran all over, and I don't even, was it Jaguars? I think it was the Jaguars who faced.
I think so.
And one of the very, few things that was said in that game, at least to kick off the game, was, wow, Josh Jacobs is running really well. But then Zamir White also was running well, and every single running back for the Raiders was running well. So it's like, this is an anomaly. This guy is not an anomaly. This guy's been playing lights out. I mean, the Raiders, who would have thought that the Raiders' greatest problem is passing the ball? With the options they have on that team. It's so stupid. Football does not make sense. It does not make sense at all. But good for Josh Jacobs. He's definitely, I agree with you 100%. Wherever he lands, this is a showcase year for him, and he's been balling out. So good for him.
Absolutely.
Now, what would you try to acquire him for? Like a third or a second, or what do you think? Probably a third. It's like a third. A third is a slap in the face. I take the back.
Josh Jacobs is worth probably the same, near the same value as Travis Etienne, I believe, right now.
Okay.
He's worth a first.
Gotcha.
No doubt in my mind. So who else is a riser?
Let's Tony Pollard. We saw last year there were rumblings, there were inklings, there were flashes of performance where Tony Pollard was just outproducing Zeke quite handedly. When Zeke would be out, Pollard would just step right in. And we got a comment here from Hollywood Titan. What up, Hollywood? See you in a couple hours. It's been crazy. And then Zeke misses this past week, and Pollard just goes off. Which, by the way, did you hear the comments from Jerry Jones where he's like, "Oh, let me list you the reasons why Ezekiel Elliott is going to be the number one running back for this team," and he's reading through them, and I'm like, "That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense." Whatever. AKA, you're strapped with him financially, so you have to say the best things you can about him. But man, Tony Pollard is such an amazing talent. Now, granted, even though he's on the RB2 pecking order here, would you say that he's potentially on the same level as a Jacobs or an ETN for Dynasty, or do you think maybe a 1 and a 2 is too expensive? It's either a 2 or a 1.
I think a 1 is getting a little too expensive because I mean, hey, I am just as excited about Tony Pollard as the next guy, but I'm just not sure. There are not a lot of running backs in the NFL. I don't want to frame this negatively toward Tony Pollard. There are very few running backs in the NFL that are number one workhorse guys that have the build to do it, that have the physical makeup to do it. I don't think Tony Pollard is that dude. Can he be a 1A? Can he be a super powered 1B like a Kareem Hunt? Absolutely. And honestly, he should be the 1A on the Cowboys because Jerry Jones lists all these reasons for Zeke Elliott being great, blah, blah, blah. Sure, he used to be, but you know what Zeke needs to be when you have a player as explosive as Tony Pollard? Efficient. You know what Zeke's not? Efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So they're running out of reasons to not give Tony Pollard more work. That said, price-wise, I think right now, without knowing his future situation and thinking of him the way I do as a 1A committee back or a super powered number 2, I'd say 2 seconds for Tony Pollard. It would be fair.
Now you're hoping for the upside play that Zeke is gone and Pollard kind of steps into the starting role, or is that what a RB2 flex is kind of giving you these days? Who's just very productive.
I think that's a reasonable RB2 price. Maybe if you're a contender and you're a solid contender, you can look at giving up a back end 1 and getting back a later pick. But yeah, it's just hard to say a first for Tony Pollard right now. I don't know if he's going to be on the Cowboys next year. I don't think
Tony Pollard really.
I don't know if they can afford him.
Is Zeke at a point where they can get rid of him, or is he's still locked in?
Somewhat. They could save cap. Like it's a possibility that he goes, but it would only be like a $4 million cap savings, and they'd still be eating $12 million worth of dead cap.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good recipe.
I mean, they just had to get rid of Amari Cooper, who, looks like Amari Cooper.
God, that catch on Monday Night Football, that one-handed catch against double. Oh, God.
That was awesome.
You, as a Browns fan, must have been very happy on Monday night.
I was. Yes. I enjoyed the game thoroughly.
I enjoyed the game thoroughly.
But also, as a Browns fan, it took until there was about 7.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter with a 4-possession lead to be like, okay, I think I'm good. I think we're safe now.
Nice.
All right. So speaking of number 1 running backs and guys who might be built to do it, Kenneth Walker might be that dude. He looks awesome in Seattle, and he's built. He's a stout dude. He's got speed. He's got shiftiness. He runs kind of wild. I
He
like
runs wild.
he's just kind of
He's like, whoa!
yeah,
When he's like, except he's
exactly.
holding a ball in his hand.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Justin Jefferson if he were shorter and stouter. You just never know which way he's going to go next.
Well, sure.
Yeah, so,
But he's been playing great. They drafted him for well, he was a second round pick, right? There's second or third
yes.
round pick.
Yep, second round.
And everybody was hoping that Rashad Penny would. That's just a sad story. I feel bad for Rashad Penny, but
Yeah.
that is how it is. That's the nature of the beast. And Kenneth Walker has looked like a league winner ever since he's been thrust into that RB1 role.
Yes. So, and jumping into some receivers here, George Pickens, just his stock just climbed in a rocket ship.
Oh my God. Yeah. It almost makes me forgive the fact that he got me 0 points last week. It almost makes me forgive I almost am forgiving of the fantasy gods for letting him get just 0 points last week, but they redeemed themselves. They moved Chase Claypool over to Chicago, and before he got you 0 points last week, him and Kenny Pickett have had a very good connection. I believe he was coming off of the Miami game where he got his first touchdown of the season. So he's been playing very well, except for that 0 point performance last week, which I will not get off of. I will not lose that until he actually does something else again, which I think is going to happen this week, to be honest with you. Wait, no, they're not playing this week. So
that's
are
right.
they playing this week?
I don't know. I hope
The
they're
next
not.
time he plays, the next time they play, I hope he does more than 0 points. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm extremely happy when the Steelers are on bye, because that means I don't have to make the Najee Harris decision.
They are on bye this week, so you don't have to make that Najee Harris decision. Congrats.
Thank the gods. All right, so another guy. So, do you think this is a blip? Jerry Jeudy. Is this something that is changing, or is this just a 2-game thing? Is Jerry Jeudy finally realizing all of that potential that he had coming out of Alabama?
There were so many passes on Sunday morning for us East Coasters, where I see Jeudy either ran the wrong route or him and Russell were, and he was just like hitting himself on the helmet, like what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? But then when you see him actually do something good, you're just like, all right, this is what the first round pick is supposed to be, the wide receiver position. I don't know, man. I don't know, and it makes me scary. Like I don't. Let me put it like this: if I don't have him on my roster, I'm not going out of my way to go get Jerry Jeudy yet. Yes. And it's unfortunately one of those situations where I know a lot of people want to, beat everybody, to the curve, or beat everybody to the. I'm messing up my expressions here, but the point is like you don't want to be the last one to the finish line when it comes to going after a player. But I don't know if I'm that big of a hurry. Like it's kind of like I'll if I get him, I get him. If I acquire him, I acquire him. If I don't, I'm still okay with it because I haven't seen enough of this Broncos offense and Russell Wilson to see that there's actually been something to really get hyped up about. What about you?
It's hard, man. Honestly, the biggest question mark in all of this for me is Russell Wilson. Yeah. Like, does he just suck now? I don't know. He could. It's very possible. Maybe Pete Carroll has just been a secret offensive genius for like the last decade and made Russell look great. Honestly, like I don't want to say it too loud, but Gino's playing like at a damn near MVP level.
It's funny that you mentioned that. So I'm driving to work today and I listened to local sports radio and they're talking about like MVP candidates. And one of the MCs brought up Geno Smith and everybody was laughing at him. I'm like, why are you laughing at him? Like, do you know how well he's flying? And yeah, he's behind like the Allens and Mahomes and Herberts and so on and so forth. Although I don't agree Herbert should be up there. And that's coming from me, who's a big Herbert fan. Just playing lights out, man. He's just playing lights out. Another person who's playing lights out here, Jacoby Brissett, your guy for at least the next few weeks here. What do we make of this for a Dynasty QB2?
So Dynasty QB2, I mean, obviously he's been a really helpful QB2 or super flex for these first 2 months of the season, and will be for, I think, the next. They're on bye this week. They got 3 more games until Jacoby goes to the bench. But I think this speaks more to his future value. And I think he earned himself a shot at maybe it's not a starting job next year, but a bridge job. And as I was going through this, it kind of got me thinking of who are these other backup quarterbacks? Who are these other bridge possibilities for next year? And I wanted to start diving into them. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it, because there are so many good potential backup and bridge starting quarterbacks that I think we can do an entire episode on it when you dive into their situations, their contracts. And I think we're just going to go ahead and do that here in the next couple weeks.
Hey, you're the boss, man. Whatever you want. Let's do this.
Because, you always want a shot at these guys. A lot of times in a super flex league, you're looking at 2 starting quarterbacks and you're just trying to figure out who that QB3 is on your roster if you have 2 really good starters. And there are a lot of guys who you can take shots on for pretty cheap and end up with a starting quarterback for a half a season or 3 months or a whole season.
I'll tell you what, I'm in one of my dynasty leagues I'm in has a really enormous bench, or else I don't know if I would be doing what I'm about to suggest. But like my starting quarterbacks are Kirk Cousins and Superflex, of course, Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson. I have 2 quarterbacks on my bench. I have Jacoby Brissett and I have Teddy Bridgewater. And Brissett has been a weekly start for me.
Yes.
And
Good choice.
When Tua went down, Bridgewater, I was not afraid to roll him out because of just what they had around him in Miami. So,
yes.
Yeah. So we got a question here. We got a question here from Johnny T80. Since you guys touched on the Steelers and Broncos, how do you think Sutton and Deontay Johnson will fare the rest of the year and going into next season? Who do you like better?
If I'm picking for the rest of the season, I actually think I'm going Deontay Johnson. So here's my reasoning. Cortland Sutton has had a bad few weeks. Jerry Jeudy's had a good few weeks. I don't trust this Russell Wilson, Nathaniel Hackett combination. Like, I think Sutton will regress to the mean a little bit. He's not going to be a bust every week. He's still going to produce, but I think just having that Claypool target share out of town and being able to split between Deontay Johnson and George Pickens a little more. I mean, Pat Fryermuth's still in there, but he's probably going to remain about the same. Just having that Claypool magnet out of town is really going to benefit Deontay Johnson. And quite frankly, I think Deontay Johnson is a better football player than Cortland Sutton. Where do you fall on that, Jorge?
So for me, I'm right there with you for Deontay Johnson, and even going into next season, Deontay Johnson. I refuse to keep fading a guy who is a target monster, whoever the quarterback is, year in and year out for their respective team. He's even with Pickett, even with the connection with Pickens. Did I say that backwards? No, I didn't. I said that correctly.
You got it.
Okay, just making sure. You still see the fact that this offense runs through Deontay Johnson. And I agree with you. The Russell Wilson situation, the Nathaniel Hackett experiment, it's blown up in their faces. And, it's the fact that you've heard all these trade rumors that, like, oh, are you going to get rid of Jeudy? Are you going to get rid of these core fundamental pieces of the Broncos offense? That doesn't instill confidence in me to want to take any type of risk or a gamble in getting any piece of this Broncos offense if I don't have them already. So give me Deontay Johnson, Johnny T80.
All right. So I guess we'll try to go through some of these guys pretty quick. One I do want to bring up because we actually put them in different sections on this. I had TJ Hawkinson as a riser. You had TJ Hawkinson as a faller.
Yeah.
So what is your rationale for TJ Hawkinson being a faller?
TJ Hawkinson was great when he was like the first or second target on his team. TJ Hawkinson was also really great when he had been healthy on the field. being the first or second target on this team. That's not the case in Detroit, or I should say, was not the case in Detroit. And now he's going to a Vikings team that, they have Osborne, they have Jefferson, they have Thielen, they have Cook out of the backfield, they have Alexander. Like, they have all these weapons. Like, I don't see where the volume is going to be his friend here. Look, I'm not saying he's not going to be a great football tight end. But for fantasy football, I don't see the upside in this trade. This screamed to me more like, hey, we're a 6-1 football team, and we want to get better as a team overall. Fantasy be damned, which obviously is what they're thinking, right? So at least that's my thought. Why are you on the rise with Hawkinson?
I think better quarterback, better offensive line, better offense overall. I think it's an absolute unmitigated upgrade for TJ Hawkinson, because he wasn't, the only time he was really focal point of the offense is when he had to be. They want to throw the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They want to throw the ball to DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. They want to throw the ball to Jamal Williams out of the backfield. And he was just kind of a cog in the machine. Whereas if you're talking Minnesota, I just think he's going to be far more involved. I really do. And I mean, and you're worried about volume here. So let's look at the tight end targets. Irv Smith is top 15 in tight end targets this year. And he's been kind of banged up at the beginning of the season. I just think Hawkinson's going to go up that list a bit. So
okay.
I like it. I think Hawkinson is on a better offense, on a more well-coached team. And it just, sorry, I don't want to say more well-coached team. I don't want to disparage Dan Campbell.
Yeah, Dan Campbell eats kneecaps. Let's not piss him off, please. Hopefully we have him as a guest one day. So
yeah, that would be awesome. No, honestly, my brain hadn't left the Nathaniel Hackett conversation. Right. So, like, in my mind, Nathaniel Hackett was still the coach that TJ Hawkinson was leaving. But I believe in this Vikings offense a lot more than I do the Detroit Lions offense. That's all.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
So
well, I think we're getting close to wrapping up here. You know what, Tyler? And I'm just spitballing here, live, unscripted, undiscussed. I love how we've been doing 30-minute episodes here for Dynasty 365 because it's quote unquote redraft season. Yeah. But we may have to do something about this because I feel like we have always like a ton to talk about, and we never get through all of it. And I think there's plenty of Dynasty interest out there. So maybe we got to figure out if we can somehow, some way include another 30 minutes here and there throughout the course of the week. What say you?
I say yes. I think that sounds great.
Love it.
Yeah.
So we will work on that, folks, and we will do our best to give you some more Dynasty info because we could, like you said, Tyler, we could spend hours talking about just quarterbacks. And we have all these positions and players, so it's give the people what they want, I think.
Absolutely. And if I can give people information that they might not know about contracts, then all the better.
Seriously, follow him at FF Tyler Heil on Twitter. Forget Spotrack. Hold on. Thanks, Hollywood. Great show, guys. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Hollywood.
Seriously, forget Spotrack. Go to Tyler's Twitter page. He'll break down any contract you want. He literally has spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets ready to go to answer your questions a lot faster than Spotrack would. So hit him up at FF Tyler Heil.
Yes, and Spotrack is a great resource. I love it.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying you're more engaging.
I took the time to understand all of the information that Spotrack has out there, which can be very hard to dig through. So for Jorge, for myself, Please follow us on Twitter at FF Tyler Heil, at Jorge B. Edwards, and please stick around on our YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Facebook for our 4-team mid-season redraft podcast. So that should be a lot of fun. And everyone, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for listening to Dynasty 365. And have yourself a good night.